The Old Testament lesson this morning is Psalm 119, verses 137 through 144. Psalm 119 is the longest psalm, and in fact, it's the longest chapter in the entire Bible. The psalm is a prayer of one who delights in and lives by the Torah, the sacred law. C.S. Lewis once said, "I take this psalm to be the greatest poem in the Psalter and one of the greatest lyrics in the world." Listen now to Psalm 119, beginning at verse 137. You are righteous, O Lord, and your judgments are right. You have appointed your decrees in righteousness and in all faithfulness. My zeal consumes me because my foes forget your words. Your promise is well tried, and your servant loves it. I am small and despised, yet I do not forget your precepts. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is the truth. Trouble and anguish have come upon me, but your commandments are my delight. Your decrees are righteous forever. Give me understanding that I may live. This is the word of the Lord.
Our gospel lesson this morning comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19. And Marge has already shared this story with you. I think about, well, we could just all go eat, but because Marge has covered a lot of points that are in my sermon as well. So it'll be reinforced really well today. Luke 19. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, he has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much. Then Jesus said to Zacchaeus, today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost. This is the word of the Lord. Thank you, Marge, for your children's message. The story of Zacchaeus has always had a special significance for me, and probably for many of you who grew up in Sunday school singing the song of Zacchaeus was a wee little man. And I'm guessing that if you're also on the short side, and I look around and I see some kindred spirits, or being politically correct, those of us who are height challenged, you can relate to Zacchaeus as well. Most children sympathize with Zacchaeus since they often know what it's like to have other people blocking their view. Marge, I know why you have trouble seeing in a crowd. And you all may remember, if you're in the height elevated category, you may have trouble remembering this, but I hope you can remember when you were a child and you went into a movie theater or a play, and you would really want to position yourself, and you paid attention to who was going to be sitting in front of you. You wanted to position yourself in a place where you could see. And do you remember as a child what it was like to have to look straight at people's waistlines or armpits? Do you remember the days when reaching something on the top cupboard shelf always necessitated climbing onto the kitchen counter? Well, there are some of us who have had to live like that all of our lives. At just a shy 5'2", I was always amongst the shortest kids in my class. At age 21, I was charged the child's price for the menu through a cafeteria. And when I did my student teaching in London, I had some inner city children approach me to say, "Excuse me, miss, is it true that you are a midget?" But there have been times when even I have felt really rather tall. I've had friends who are 4'10" or less, and one was a guy. And even I could see over the top of his head. It was interesting because all of his best friends happened to be on the football and basketball teams. And when they walk across campus together, they'd make quite a contrast. Zacchaeus must have been this kind of a guy, so small that it was notable. Think about how rarely biblical writers bother to describe a person's physical characteristics. They never really tell us what Jesus looked like. But Zacchaeus is among the few who have this kind of information about them in the Bible, telling us that he was small of stature. And as I reflect on this text, it seems that Zacchaeus' height is in direct contrast to his wealth. He was rich. In terms of financial success, he was big. You would think that such great affluence would place him amongst the political movers and shakers of the Jericho community, that he would be amongst the socially elite, envied and esteemed by many. But that is not exactly the case, because Zacchaeus was despised. And in effect, that made him very small. He was small because he was hated for amassing such great personal wealth by taking advantage of others. It seems that tax collectors have been frequent characters in recent sermons as we've been going through the Gospel of Luke. So by now, and especially after Marge also reinforced this, you understand that to be a tax collector in those days was not like working for the Roman equivalent of the IRS. You can think mafia instead. The Roman tax system was corrupt, and to be frank, that's the way, by cheating others, was the only way that those tax collectors really got paid, I believe. And Zacchaeus is noticed as being a chief tax collector. I don't know if there was like a pyramid system or something like that, but it implies that he had even greater complicity in such corruption. Zacchaeus' wealth was acquired by cheating others, lining his own pockets, then passing on the rest to Caesar. And in the eyes of the Jews, Zacchaeus was hated as a sinner who abused his power to prey upon others. So rather than being big in the eyes of the public, Zacchaeus was cut down to his own size, and he was small. When Randy Newman wrote his satirical song Short People in the 1970s to reflect the irrational nature of prejudice, you would have thought that he personally knew Zacchaeus. Some of you are of the right era to remember that song with its chorus of short people got no reason to live and don't want those short people around. Well, that just about sizes up how some people felt about Zacchaeus. Not only because he was short in stature, but because he left them short on cash after his collections. And it also sizes up the kinds of people who hold prejudice and hatred against others when they have done no wrong to them. It might make them feel superior over someone else to deem them less than themselves. But often it is insecurity, fear, and ignorance that are behind their prejudice. Those who hold prejudices are being small. As I think about Zacchaeus' smallness, I realize that perhaps I can relate to Zacchaeus on more than one level. Yes, I know what it's like to be short, but I also know what it's like to feel small. I feel small when I say something that hurts someone's feelings. I feel small when I lose control of my temper. I feel small when I make a big deal about small things. I feel small in the face of the great dangers that now threaten our planet. I feel small when I allow fear to take control. So when is it that you feel small? Just take a moment and think about how you would answer that question to yourself. What causes you to feel small? What causes you to feel small? I'm guessing that each of us has a way in which we can relate to Zacchaeus in his smallness. In truth, we are all small people. Although Zacchaeus may have been despised by others, there's something you've also got to like about this guy, and that is his intense desire to see Jesus and the great lengths he went to do so. Something about Jesus drew Zacchaeus into the crowd. Maybe it was the stories that were circulating about Jesus' miracles or teachings, and perhaps it was the growing public speculation that Jesus was the Messiah, or maybe it was the mounting excitement of the crowd wondering what might happen as Jesus drew near to Jerusalem for what would be his final Passover. Zacchaeus was there with the rest of the crowd, clamoring for a look at this man. When short, little Zacchaeus found it impossible to see anything but the backs of the people in front of him, he demonstrated his resourcefulness, a resourcefulness that short people must learn. He climbed a sycamore tree. He was not so arrogant that he wouldn't lower himself to such boyish tactics. After all, he had lowered himself to doing a lot worse. But he was the kind of man who knew how to get the things that he wanted. He ran ahead to the sycamore tree and perched high on its branches to gain a clear line of vision, to see Jesus as he passed by. Then something radical, almost incredible, happens. Between the tree and the dinner table, Zacchaeus was changed. His life was transformed. The wretched tax collector, scorned by many, has a change of heart. Somewhere between the appetizer and the dessert, Zacchaeus decides to part with his fortune, giving half to the poor and making full restitution to those he has cheated. Like the Grinch who stole Christmas, Zacchaeus' small heart grew up in size that day as he pledged to return all that he had taken fourfold. What was it that made the difference? What caused Zacchaeus to take off the blinders of greed and selfishness, to see his own sinfulness and desire to make right with others? What led him to be able to say with joy, I will give half of everything I owe to the poor, everything I own to the poor, and to everyone I have cheated, I will pay back 4 times what I have taken? What caused his small heart to balloon in size that day? It was simply that Jesus saw short, little Zacchaeus up in that tree. And he looked at him with eyes that could pierce his soul. Jesus saw how small Zacchaeus really was, and he knew him, inside and out. Thief, scoundrel, wretched man that he was. And Jesus looked at him and smiled warmly, calling him by name, Zacchaeus, come down quickly because I want to spend some time with you. I'm hoping to stay at your house today. What changed Zacchaeus was Jesus' invitation, his desire to enter into relationship with Zacchaeus, to accept him just the way he was, in all of his smallness. To the crowd, it was a sensational move, a radical departure from the anticipated itinerary of Jesus, a detour to the house of Zacchaeus. Why, for heaven's sake, would Jesus want to do that? Doesn't he know who this man is? What the crowd didn't understand is that Jesus comes in the very hopes of finding the lost and bringing them safely home. Salvation came to the house of Zacchaeus because Jesus invited himself over, and Zacchaeus unlocked the door. As the light of Christ shines into the darkness of Zacchaeus' heart, he is changed. He recognizes that he cannot restore his relationship with God without restoring his relationship with others. And as he is able to let go of the things that have kept him small, his heart grows in size. The good news of the gospel for all of us small people that we are is here for all of us. Jesus invites us to join him at his table, and he comes to be present at our tables in our homes. And he will be present with us as we gather with our friends from St. John after worship at those tables. And he calls each of us by name, seeing within us our brokenness and pain, as well as the hurt we have sometimes caused to others. And he accepts us. He longs to be in relationship with us. Come, he says, I want to spend some time with you. Let us pray. Oh God, we give thanks that the grace of salvation is accessible to people of all sizes, shapes, and colors. You invite us all into relationship with you, and you long to transform our hearts. May we intently pursue a life of faith with curiosity, diligence, and hope, knowing that we can take part in expanding your kingdom here on earth. Amen.